But last week, I know we were talking about this idea of like building, right? This week, we're going to do a part two to that conversation. And we're probably going to build this conversation out until like the beginning of June. This idea of Legos and bricks to actually kind of started just from a few conversations that I've had with students. And one of the things that I was talking with Anthony and Dylan about, because Dylan was doing some shoots with us, and we were talking about, we just had to have like a random conversation, and Anthony and I actually had like a deep conversation off of it, but we were just talking about like cultural influences and expectations. So today's conversation is going to be on the idea of influence, not like influencers on social media, but more so influence with those people who are around you and your day-to-day influences of life. So I know last week we talked about quiet time and kind of stopping some of that noise just consistently coming at you. But how important would you all rate the impact of people's words to one another? Let's do like a show of hands or put a number in the chat. Let's just say 1 to 10. How important would you say that is? Or if you want to share, you can unmute yourself and share. 8, okay. 3? Okay. Any other numbers? 7, 6, all right. 7, yeah. 7, okay, cool. So the one thing that we'll see, right? Someone said 3, where it's like little importance, right? Others have said 8, which is a lot of importance. And the biggest thing to understand from that is just everybody's on their own spectrum, right? So in knowing that, and this is going to go into some of our trainings that we'll do, especially on feedback, and knowing that everyone has a strong range of how words impact them, then that means it's our jobs and our duties to make sure that what we say to people is thought out, right? We think about it, we speak on it carefully because it could negatively impact them or it could positively impact them, right? And these are things that we're not always necessarily aware of because life happens, it shuffles us around, and then we kind of just say things, or we say things that we don't really mean, or we just say it and then someone else takes it in a different way because of their life experiences. So it's really hard to balance all of that. So today I really want to talk about 4 specific areas of influence. The first one is cultural influence, and this is where Anthony and I were talking about it. But we talked about like these, how many of you have heard like, by the time you're 30, you should like have a house. Maybe some people have a family. Others are like have $1 million or have your own business. How many of you have that kind of like dream or vision? Beautiful, beautiful. Anyone know? You have it. Okay, Anthony, you got it. So that's some of the things that we were talking about, right? And I think those are good to set goals, right? But I think the thing that you start to notice is as you get older and you get closer to that space, your life and what we talked about last time, where it's like what you wanted to be in high school to what you wanted to be in college and what you want to be now looks completely different. And attaching your influence or your lifestyle around that idea can be devastating when you get to that space and it doesn't actually happen, right? Let's say you get 3 out of the 5 things on your list. You're mainly going to pay attention to the 2 things that you didn't get versus like the 3 things that you were able to accomplish. So I think that's very important when we think about that reflecting activity, right? Making sure that you're reflecting throughout that. And then you can adjust some of those things as you get to that age or that specific goal that you have, and that can truly help. I know for me, I did that when I was in college. I was like, yeah, by the time I get out of college, I'm gonna make like 60,000 because I heard somebody say like, yeah, you should make like $60,000. And I did not make $60,000 coming out of college. I wish, but it was one of those things that was really tough for me to be like, dang, I'm not as good as I thought I was, when in fact it had nothing to do with that, right? It just ended up being like a different pathway that I needed to take versus somebody else. So making sure you're adjusting in that moment can help your self-confidence or sometimes hurt that self-confidence. So making sure that you're always aware of like where you are in your space and how can I grow and develop in that space. Because the goal ultimately is I want you all to believe in yourself and have an amazing life, career, and be focused in that space. Let's talk about influencing with peers, right? Some of you are graduating this year. So I'm sure you have a lot of peers similar to how I was just talking about in that story where they were getting jobs all in that same space, right? Do any of you have peers who have like cool jobs or have already got their jobs or kind of have their life figured out? Yeah. And that can be intimidating. And for all of us, we're not necessarily there. And one of the things that I would always say is like, take your time during that space instead of rushing, right? That's something that I can say that I did where I didn't really take time to reflect on like, what did I really like in school? And for some of you who are like freshmen or sophomores, this is the time to really spend that time really reflecting and figuring out what do you want to do? What do you like? What don't you like? And that will help you to really get into a finite space of understanding what career do you want to go into. One of the activities that a friend of ours, Dim, kind of has said on a podcast was like going through job applications and job descriptions and seeing exactly what are those tasks that they're doing and then aligning that with what you enjoy doing in your space. Because a lot of the times, not everything on there is going to be something that you enjoy, but you can see moments of it. And then that can share a glimpse into what do you actually want to do in your day-to-day life, right? What do you want to do in your actual career? Because a lot of times we think we want to be, like for me, I wanted to be an investment banker, right? And I thought I wanted to be that, but then looking at the job description, I was like, I don't like any of this stuff, right? I don't really want to talk to people about money. I don't really want to go out there and try to be on the floor figuring out the stock market. Like I just like to like come up with concepts and ideas and put it out there. So making sure you're in that constant alignment. Otherwise, for me, when I was worried about my peers were getting jobs, and then I had to really get a job to go home. I just rushed into a career, didn't really analyze what I really wanted to do, right? I just kind of ran into it, and that kind of messed up maybe my starting clock, but it all ends up working out. So always think about adjusting for that peer influence. How many of you have picked your careers based off of family influence? Okay. Anyone else feel like they've based their career off of family influence? That's good. So let's talk about why you haven't based it off of family influence. What has made it really easy for you not to do that?
That's really for me. I didn't like go based on family simply because I don't know. For me, I was just straight up. I was like, at the end of the day, I'm gonna end up living my life. So I want to do something that I enjoy. I'm not gonna go to a college to basically impress my parents. I'm going to college for something that I want and for a career that I know that I'll enjoy. So that was basically my like logical thinking. It wasn't like I don't know. There wasn't a reason why, but just for the fact that I'm gonna be the one that's gonna be going to college. I'm gonna be the one that's gonna be doing the studying. So I might as well invest all that time into something that I actually do want and would appreciate.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important. Talking about investing your time into something that you do want to do, right? Because this time is very limited, even though some of you all school is 3 years, others of you is 4 years. You just have to figure out like where is that investment of time best used. Maddie, you said you used to. What was the change for you?
I don't know. So my a lot of like the people in my family were like doctors. My mom's a nurse. So there was just like this pressure to like go into healthcare. And I was actually my first few years of undergrad, I was a neuroscience major with like the plans of being a neurosurgeon. But then I was like, I hate this and I can't do this anymore. So yeah, I kind of just like went my own direction. I mean, still kind of the same, but not really.
And that can take time, right? And I think that's the one thing is like, we talked about this last week. All these points are always going to kind of go hand in hand with one another, but it's all about self-discovery, right? Maddie took that time to figure it out, right? And some of you are still in that phase of figuring out what you want to do, and that's completely okay, right? Don't ever feel like you can't be in that space. Because even I can say, right, I work with people who are like 45 and like 30. I think Derek's like what, 34, 35. And they're still figuring out what they want to do, because as you continue to discover yourself, you're able to figure out, okay, I like this one thing, and I also like this other thing. So sometimes you transition in the way you do things, or you utilize a strength that you have and create a bridge to open up other opportunities for people as well. So always think about that as a space to grow in. So yeah, that's really figuring out like that family influence. And then I think as you kind of narrow it in or funnel it in into your influence, the things that I want us to really think about is like, where are we getting these influences from, right? You might have this idea of like, by 30, I want to do this, or by the time I graduate school, I want to do this, or I'm really interested in this career. Why are you interested in those things? I'm not saying that for you all to like second guess yourself. I'm saying it so you can really reflect on what's the true reason why you want to do these things. Because at the end of the day, I want what you want, but you need to know like the reason why you want it, right? Because that's truly what's going to get you to that next space. I'm a huge person on reflecting, as you all know. Like that has been my main thing that I've said in these last two conversations. But in reflecting and always checking in on yourself, you always get to see like, what are these new nuances and things that I'm interested in, and how does it pertain to the work that I'm doing? And I'm a huge believer in more so understanding that God, the universe, whoever, whatever that looks like for you, right? Your gifts are to help other people. So figuring out like, how can you help other people in that same space, right? You might want to get to a career, but really reflect on like, how can this help someone else as well? Because what I've come to find out is like, by helping others, you really discover more of yourself within that help. And even thinking about DIM University, right? I've worked on some really cool projects that I've never thought I would be able to do. But for me, by far, DIM University has been the coolest project that I've ever seen, because we've been able to help students get to their dream careers. And that's ultimately what I want to do and what I'm still pursuing in my life. So I think this was something that I never knew I wanted, and it just came to fruition. And I think through that, you always have to just kind of check yourself to see like, okay, things are changing, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be anything that can be super like overwhelming. In the moment it is, but as you reflect on it and take a step back, then you start to see, wow, this is something that's truly helping or impacting me or impacting other people that I work with as well. So I want you all to think about those 4 areas of influence that we talked about. You have about 12 minutes to go into breakout rooms and chat more about it. We'll come back and we'll share some of the insights and conversations that you had, and then we'll go from there. Sound good?
For my group, where we were kind of talking about what influenced us and how we've shifted our perspective, and how it's knowing how cultural influences can be. Like, for example, me, Maddie, and Jemima were talking about, or Jemima, we're talking about how our families have influenced us in a way to want kids or to want to build a home and stuff like that. And it's just subtle things that family members can say to make us feel this way. But we're becoming more in our own self, where we're figuring out what we want instead of listening to what others want for us. So we're kind of detaching from the system and becoming our own selves.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to share before we wrap up?
I just kind of shared about how much my older cousin has influenced me, because he has his own music video production company and his like own studios and stuff. And like growing up, I'm like so lucky to have him, because if I didn't, then like I really don't know what I would want to do in life. So he like influenced me like crazy and taught me so much about everything with cameras and everything. And then I just talked about how like I want to do like stuff in his line of work, but I also don't want to do exactly what he did step for step and kind of like follow in his footsteps and just do the same thing. But I also want to do the same like kind of work. So I'm definitely trying to do it my own way and make it my own stuff, but also use what he taught me.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's the key. I love it. Let's give everyone a round of applause. Thank y'all for sharing. We appreciate it. And always remember, right? This is all about your dream career. So if you have not heard it today, I believe in your dream career. Whatever it might be, just utilize what you're figuring out in your life through self-discovery to go forward in that dream career. And no matter what twists and turns might happen, just stay focused on what you want to do and just navigate it your unique way. So thank y'all.